Every time I tell people here in Japan that I'm from the Solomon Islands, I get different kinds of responses. I guess the most common one is, "You are the first person from the Solomon Islands that I met." Well, we only have more than 700,000 people on this island, and I guess it's quite normal for people not to know us because of our tininess.
The more I think about it, the more sensible it is for me to tell my story.
I mean, not a lot of Solomon Islanders are out there on the internet talking about their experience here in this beautiful country of Japan. So I guess today, that's what we are going to talk about. Well, if you've been to Japan, you will probably agree with me that Japan is so different from so many countries. But as a person who comes from a tiny Pacific Island nation like the Solomon Islands, I'd like to believe that even though there are vast differences between cities like New York and Tokyo, to some extent, there are so many common grounds when you talk about living in these cities. I think you have to grow up on a small island to understand where you're coming from. If I'm going to tell you how I feel about Japan, I think it would be nice if I first talk about the Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands is a Pacific nation close to Australia and Papua New Guinea, and we have about 992 islands. Almost 80% of the total population live in rural areas. I grew up in a village on an island called Malaita, which is one of the big islands in the archipelago. After university, I moved to the capital, Honiara, for work. But Honiara is just a city of over 100,000 people, and although you have the chance of enjoying some modern facilities, by international standards, I think Honiara is very much a little town. And coming from such a small place to a place as big as Tokyo, it was surprisingly overwhelming. This is the reason why I think my experience as a black person from the islands living here in Japan is never going to be the same as that of another black person coming from, say, a country like America. I mean, things like having a credit card, having to pay for health insurance and all this. These are the things that we don't have them in the islands. Experiencing them for the first time while here in Japan is such a very, very good eye-opener for me. I got my credit card through my university, and the initial plan was to use it to pay for a flight ticket, but then I ended up using it for other things, and I remember struggling to pay for the bill the next month, and that's how it hit me. Oh, so this is one of the pressures that Western people have to deal with, paying for such bills. And the funny thing is, some of these bills are created by ourselves. But I've learned a lot from the experience. I mean, if I decide to find a job and stay here in Japan for an extended period, my experiences in the last 3 years would certainly help me cope with life. But having said that, I sort of miss the simplicity of life back in the islands to some extent. I would want to go back home one day and maybe contribute something to my country. And I'm not looking to do anything that big. When it comes to the Solomon Islands, I think the media hasn't really put a lot of information out there on the internet about the beautiful country. Yeah, so probably everything that I have been learning for the past 3 years in terms of YouTube will one day help me tell Solomon Island stories. And yeah, I'll probably put them on the internet for you to watch. The simplicity of life in the islands. Those stories need to be told. For a lot of foreigners who live in Japan, one of the biggest challenges for them is trying to make friends here in Japan. I'm quite lucky in this area because I have a lot of international friends here. As a person who loves music, I play the guitar and I can sing. I do hang out with friends who also have the same interest, and I'm really loving it here. when you are an islander living in a huge city like Tokyo, I think one of the interesting things about it is everything looks interesting to you. In the beginning, everything was such a hassle. I mean, the struggle of trying to get on trains, trying to master the language and all this. I think I've adapted so well, and I've managed to build myself a routine around the normal life here in Tokyo, so to speak. So the kind of videos that you're going to find on this channel do reflect the things that I really enjoy about Japan. Does that mean I do not have any challenges as a foreigner here in Japan? Well, the opposite is true. You know, as human beings, whenever we find ourselves in a new environment, there is certainly going to be challenges for us to deal with. But we are also beautifully made to adapt. You know, there are certain things about the Japanese culture that I do not really understand. For example, in Japan, police officers have the habit of randomly checking on foreigners, black or white. Normally, they would stop you along the street and ask for your ID. Well, sometimes I don't really understand why they do that. And although I don't really understand it, I think it's very much a non-issue for me. I remember the other day I saw one YouTuber like filming a police officer randomly checking on someone, and he was like saying words which, I mean, I find it quite interesting, to say the least. I mean, just think about it. You walk into someone's house and then you started complaining about how they manage their household. I'm beginning to sound a bit controversial here, but for me personally, there are certain things in life that we just need to accept them. I mean, think about it. Now, having said that, I would like to say thank you to the Japanese government for enabling me to come all the way from the Solomon Islands to be educated here in Japan. Yeah, it has been a very life-changing opportunity. If you want to know how I moved from the Solomon Islands to Japan, please do check out this video right up here. Please do like and subscribe. This is Harold. I'll see you in the next one.